Welcome to Strength in the Numbers. My name is Andrew Codd, accountant, author, and commercial finance entrepreneur, and it's my job each week to bring you leaders in finance and business and deconstruct with them their real stories, insights, and hard-won lessons into practical advice on the key strengths and qualities you need to remain relevant in accounting and finance today, as well as the steps you can begin to take to elevate the impact you make to have a fun, successful, and rewarding career in accounting and finance. Now let's go over to the show. Hi everyone, and our guest mentor today is Andrew Jepson, who's owner and founder of Vincero Consulting, that provides outsourced CFO services targeted to SME businesses, as well as coaching and mentoring programs to high-performing finance teams. Now Andrew's very passionate on this episode about finance business partnering. That comes across quite a lot, and he's also a regular contributor on LinkedIn on the topic, but also of adding value for SMEs as well. And in the meantime, he's teamed up with the Outperformer as part of his compliance to commercial finance business partnering programs. Now, Andrew is based out of Sydney, Australia. He's 15 plus years qualified as a chartered accountant, and he's also worked in many companies globally across multiple industries. When I was preparing the show notes for this episode, Andrew's got some really great quotes, but in terms of key points we covered together was where his passion for finance business partnering comes from, the paradox that most accounting and finance professionals have when we're within organizations, particularly when we move from practice into industry or even start making our way in the profession, how he arrived on the expression from compliance to commercial, and also a couple simple techniques for not only improving our credibility, but then going on to become trusted advisors. So the show notes for this episode can be found on sitnshow.com/podcast/028. So without further ado, over to Andrew and the show.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a chartered accountant. I'm in lonely little Sydney in Australia, a little island at the bottom of the world, but plenty of business going on over here. So yeah, there's lots to do. I started off as an auditor many years ago. I did auditing for 4 years and at the time loved it. Looking back, I doubt I'd ever go back there again, but at the time I really enjoyed it. And I think anyone out there who is an auditor, you get a great foundation and basis for accounting by doing that. So I did that for a period of time. Moved over to London and spent some time in London doing group financial accounting roles, mainly in a FTSE 100 company there, which was great experience. But I yearned to get into a business unit and start to apply my skills in a business unit and help a company or an organisation or a business unit make more money or save more money. So I came home to Australia, did a couple of years at Lendlease, which is a global company, and then I moved into a company called Frucor, which was quite a commercial role. Frucor is Australia's third largest beverage supplier, FMCG type company, and I spent about 7 years there, pretty much doing everything from a finance perspective. So financial control, worked on strategy with the exec team, and ended up being a head of commercial finance there. But I thought I wanted to be a finance director, and I thought I wanted to be a CFO and, of an ASX company or something like that. But what I found in my journey, and I didn't find it out until late on, is that I actually quite enjoy getting my hands dirty and being in the business rather than sitting in a boardroom and discussing all sorts of things. I actually like going out and getting into the business. So I stepped away from Frucor and thought, well, what can I do? And I started up my own consulting business that does freelance CFO stuff for smaller organisations. So typically less than 100 mil. They want to get a CFO in, but they don't want to spend the price tag of a CFO. So they'll get someone like me for 2 or 3 days a week, 4 or 5 days a month, and I come in and I can provide that expertise, and at the same time I can get my hands dirty and get involved in the business and do what I enjoy. So I do that. I also have a passion for business partnering, which comes out of what I just spoke about, and accordingly, after years of running teams and years of spending time with the Institute facilitating CA programs and marking exams, I had this frustration that people were answering questions, and they technically, they knew the answer to them, but from a business perspective, I didn't think their development was there as what I thought. And then you look at the mark, and you've given them 15 out of 20, and I was getting frustrated with that. So I thought, what can I do about that? So I developed my own business partnering program, which is a development program for sort of up to 5 years post-qual of people who are moving from financial accounting type roles into more commercial roles, or people that are perhaps in Big Four who've now gone into an organisation and the world's completely different. How do they make that transition, and how do they, not suffer from the errors that many people make and ruin their career quite quickly? How do they learn all that and get up to speed quickly? So I do that as well, and that's a bit of a passion project. That's something that I really enjoy doing, and do it a couple of times a year. So yeah, that's pretty much my journey in 5 minutes or less.
I mean, that's one thing I love doing what I'm doing, is I like getting my hands dirty with the business. And similarly, I ended up working with SMEs myself as sort of their virtual CFO, but also I also share that frustration you did. And like, that was one of the reasons why we set up this show, is because the people I've come across in our profession, particularly the ones that are making the transition from either school, college, or coming from a Big Four background, is technically they're really, really good. I just couldn't get over the fact that we've got these people with great potential, but didn't really know how to interact with the business and add value, and how to develop insights in the way that they could influence and also make an impact. So that's why I've sort of set out on a similar journey. And it's interesting you've described that as well. I mean, in terms of how we can do finance business partnering a bit more effectively, I know in the past you've sort of shared articles on this, but could you break that down for us to maybe 4 or 5 key things that our listeners could take away?
The main thing that I talk about in my program, and a lot of my blogs and material that people see on LinkedIn, is this concept that business partnering is all about trying to influence things and trying to influence other functions who are non-finance, and push them in a certain direction, or provide them with insight and course correction and that sort of stuff. And the thing, you can't actually get influence until you have credibility. So you've got to build your credibility up within an organisation before you can even think about trying to influence people. And the credibility comes from the basic finance things that you need to do. So your month-end reporting and all that sort of analysis. That's where you start to build your credibility. Now, some people try to cheat the system and just try to go out and provide insight and influence straight away. And if they haven't got that credibility, they'll get shot down really quickly. Some people are really good at it. You talked before about technical ability. Now I like to talk about technical ability is great, but it's not what defines you as successful in an organisation. Because what happens with your technical ability is that you go to university and you study for a few years, then you go and do your professional qualification, whatever that is. It might be CA or CPA or ACCA or whatever it is. You do that for about 5 or 6 years, and you are at the top of your game technically when you complete that. You won't know anything more about accounting standards or tax law or anything more than what you know at that time when you finish your course. So you're technically as strong as you'll ever be. But what tends to happen after that is that once you get in an organisation, your technical ability drops off, and it gets defined by the role that you're in at the time. So an example for me, I worked at Lend-Lease for a period of time, and in that role I had to look after share plans. So I had to do share plan accounting, all the time. So I was constantly looking at that standard and making sure that the transactions that were coming through around share plans, I was over how to account for them. If you ask me now how the share plan accounting standard works, I'd have no idea, because I just don't spend time in it. But what most accountants believe is that their technical skills is what will make them successful. And now, if that was true, when you're at the top of your game in your technical skills, that's when you finish your CA. If that was true, you'd be the manager, and the managers would be the staff. So there's something else going on with people that, the managers, they're doing something else that makes them successful, and it's not technical. And that's the paradox or the paradigm that most finance people who go and work in organisations have is that they believe that their technical skills and doing another course and doing another program is going to unlock them into this brilliant space of their career, and it's not. There's other things going on, and it's applying that technical knowledge and being able to talk a language of the people in your organisation, and it's the way you behave in the organisation. So the things that you say and the things that you do, and the way that you be, and how you interact with your team, and how you interact with your peers who are non-finance people, and how you interact with your boss. They're all really, really, really important to get you ahead in your career. And some people have nutted that and have no technical skills whatsoever, and they get promoted really quickly. Everyone's got a story of someone who got promoted, and you look at them and you think, how did they get promoted? They don't know anything. Well, they're really good at this behavioural thing and being able to apply the technical. That's what they're good at. So
I'm delighted you raised that, because it just seems that some of the younger people I know I've mentored and coached over the years is they feel like they have to do more courses. And I mean, I get that. I mean, if you're part of any institute, part of SEMA, and I think last month, they sent me 18 emails selling courses. And it just feels like you're on this constant treadmill to improve technical levels and so on. I mean, that was why I picked an MBA in the organisation I was working with, because when you look around and see the people who were progressing, and at the time I wanted to be a finance director, I felt you needed an MBA to be able to speak the language of the business. And then that's not a technical course, and then you sort of realise, you look around, and I'm glad you sort of said, you look around at people who are progressing and they're not doing those technical courses, and you wonder how they're doing it. Well, that's a really good question to ask, because then people might actually start seeing the way of getting ahead. And think about, if someone's doing a week-long course, 8 hours a day, that's 40 hours. Imagine if you spent those 40 hours observing and talking with mentors or finding out how people are getting ahead in the areas you want to. Then isn't that a better way of spending your time? Just the way you sort of said it.
Yeah.
So
that's exactly right. I mean, if you were to look up any learning model out there around courses and how you then apply that in your organisation, 10% of the learning comes from the material that you go and learn on a course. 20 of it comes from coaching, so coaching from your peers or your boss or whatever it is, and then 70% of it's on the job. So if you're going and just doing course after course after course, you're missing out on that 70%, which is on-the-job training and reinforcing what you've learnt in those courses. You've got to have a connection between them. So,
completely. Now, I don't want to miss the fact that you do the exam marking as well. They submit it for financial accounting. So from, I suppose, the technical perspective of what you're seeing in the exam papers that you're marking, any sort of trends you spotted over the last 10 years?
I think, I do it for the CA in Australia. So the trend I see when I'm marking exams is you get the typical perfect technical answer, which generally will get well marked and get sort of 14, 15 out of 20. And then you get these advanced answers where you can really see the depth of the candidate's understanding of they can read between the lines of what the question's asking. They're not just answering what's on the page. Because, anyone who's done a professional qualification, you can nearly get through the exams by just having a really good, what we call a critical file, which has all your templates and all that sort of stuff. So you get a question and you just, effectively copy and paste. But the really good candidates who are getting 18, 19, 20 out of 20, they're writing succinctly and they can clearly articulate the depth and breadth of what's in the question. It's quite interesting. And then the other way, you just get some really robotic answers they're just way off, and you just sometimes you can't quite understand what they're saying. So there is an art in you're reading a question and you're answering it, and you've got to articulate it on a bit of paper and write it for someone who's going to read it and have no idea where you're coming from. So there is an art and a skill in that, especially when you're under time pressure. So I enjoy the exam marking because you get to see what things people are struggling with. Things like working capital. I mean, at the
Oh,
at the
wow.
qualification stage, it's really hard to. You're reading what people are saying about working capital. Working capital is quite simple. It's you've got inventory and you want to try and sell it, and as soon as you sell it, you want to turn that into cash. So inventory and your debtors, it's just turning that into cash as quickly as you can. But the candidates get wrapped up in the technical sort of mathematics and formulas of it, and it's just really bizarre to
It's
watch.
weird. It's weird. It's one of those things that actually, and that's I have to say, like that's definitely an avenue when you're working with the smaller companies. They seem to lose their way at working capital, and of course, cash is king. And I don't know about you, but I
Yes,
found that it wasn't until I started getting my hands dirty with businesses in a good way in terms of practicing some of these ideas in those environments, it becomes second nature how you manage and get the most
correct.
and optimize working capital, where it must be hard for exam students, the people who haven't really had that experience, to get a sense of and
Yeah, that's
get out
right.
of their own heads a bit on those sort of things. But I think that's probably a general feel I'm getting is people maybe are lacking that practical experience when they're doing the exams, so that it is a bit like second nature. But it is still a good foundation. One thing I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about it is I absolutely love your expression from compliance to commercial. How did you come up with that?
It's a good question. I probably spent about 2 or 3 months trying to come up with a catchy little phrase to it. But it was what am I trying to do here? What sort of a program am I trying to build? And I'm trying to build a program that protects us accountants from what's coming in the next 5 or 10 years, and that's robotics and AI and outsourcing. And centers of excellence and all that sort of stuff, where the transactional processing type nature of a large part of an accountant's role in the past is just not going to be. It's going to be streamlined very quickly and done by things that can do it 1,000 times quicker than a human can. So that's compliant type work. So the real that's where we are, and where I think we need to be as accountants is we need to be trusted advisors for the organisations we're in, and the only way we can do that is to get a really deep breadth and depth understanding of what's going on in a business, and you can do that 1,000 ways, and that's being really commercial. So yeah, it just came out of that. We are trained and we're programmed and we're conditioned to be compliant in nature and objective. The world's a very complex place, and so is business. It's more subjective, it's more grey, and that's where finance people can take that technical training, which they need, and start to add some value in businesses.
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore because in my mind, there's two mega trends going on in our profession. There's this sort of digitization that you mentioned with the robotics, the artificial intelligence, and so on, and the
Yes.
centers of excellence. And then you've got the other side, which I think is encouraging us to be more human as accountants.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take a big dig at the accounting bodies here because we have a lot of personal responsibility to be more human, but it just feels that we're not maybe as fast out the blocks getting that sort of technical training that are our table stakes to get that stuff out of our head, so we can hit the ground running a bit better with these sort of more human skills that are required as part of finance business partnering.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the reality of business is that it's all people. It's dealing with people and talking to people and trying to understand things that have happened through people. Now you can automate and roboticize as much as you want, but somewhere along the line there is still a relationship in business, and that will never go away.
Going back to my old economics, I suppose it's people in organisations. We generate costs anytime we do an activity. There's costs, hence activity-based costing. But then customers are people too, and they're the ones that generate the profits because customers are the profit centers. So it's all about people. It's how you make money. It's how you save money. It's all about people. It's all about relationships.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. People will do business with people or organisations that they trust. I may speak for myself, but I certainly don't trust a robot just yet. Now I may get to a place where I do, but that tells me that business will forever, or for
Yeah.
at least a short to medium time, will still be heavily reliant on human beings. And as accountants, that's something that we can tap into.
completely. So Andrew, what's exciting you most about finance and accounting at the moment?
I mean, this business partnering concept it's come out of, it's been floating around for a while. It's probably just, the business partnering's just been just a tag that's been given to it. And I mean, that is a mega trend at the moment that's happening. And I just happen to be in that space and, in the right place at the right time. But I think articulating what that means and starting to transition people away from this transactional stuff to being, building more relationships and becoming trusted advisors to people is pretty exciting for me. I get a lot of people talking to me about this and wanting to tap into my insights around it. It is a very, very, very broad space. You can go in a thousand different ways. The approach I like to take and the approach myself and Brad at the Outperformer tend to take is to take it from the angle of the non-finance person. So a lot of finance business partnering stuff that's out there at the moment is from a finance perspective. We've gone out and done research from the other side, so sales, marketing, operations, HR, IT. What are they looking for out of their finance business partners? Because once we can work that out, we can then start to think and talk about and develop the things that we need to give them what they want. And it's the same with the customer. If you're going out and giving a customer a product that you want them to have, if they don't want it and they don't need it, then it's actually useless to them. So I think one of the things with business partnering at the moment is we're trying to be finance people for them, and they're not, and the other functions aren't wanting that. They're wanting something else. Now, whether there's a disconnect between understanding what good finance looks like and what it doesn't, that needs to be navigated through.
Yeah, for sure. I like to describe this sort of journey as, we all need to go to the dentist at some point to get our teeth checked out, but how many of us really want to? And like it's just thinking about that process. It's like the business partners, they definitely need to have their finances done in a particular way, but there's a lot more that they need and perhaps not realize that they want. But to be successful on that journey, they have to realize they want it. So it does actually. And how do you get there? Well, it's just going out and engaging with them and figuring out what it is that they want versus what they think they have at the moment, and then closing sort of gaps there. Even if you don't think it's the best thing to do, it's moving at that angle, and then you can start opening up to what they need and all the stuff that we've been trained to provide them with. So it's just interesting that I feel, I know I'll hold my hand up and say I was the guilty one, sort of thinking I've got all these skills, they definitely need these things, but they don't really know that they need them.
And also you don't underestimate how much knowledge an accountant or a finance person has that they take for granted and think that others do. So
good point.
A great example, I get an email from my sister-in-law probably 2 or 3 times a year where she emails me and asks me how to calculate a percentage for her. Now, I don't even have to get the calculator out. I can give her that percentage in 1 second. But for her, she that's something that she finds really difficult to do. She's got a whole lot of other things that she's brilliant at that I couldn't do. And that's what business partnering is. It's me recognising what is my partner good at and getting them to do that. And what am I good at that they're bad at? And I can step in and help them do that, and they can step in and help me do some stuff, and together you become a better partnership. That's what it's all about. And I think a lot of finance people sit there and go, oh, why doesn't this person know how to do this? Why do they keep getting it wrong? And that's not effective. That's part of the problem.
Yeah, but I love the example. I mean, and great. We do take those sort of things for granted. You'd be in a meeting and someone would look across at you, expect you to know the answer to percentage, and it comes straight off the top of the head. We can do those things.
Yeah.
And
that's a great way. That is a great, what I talked about before. That's a great way of building your credibility, is getting out and getting in front of people and just spending time with them, and something that you think is really simple, you will show it to them and they'll think brilliant. It's really complicated, and they just think you're a genius and brilliant. And they tell their manager who tells their manager, and all of a sudden, Andrew's this brilliant person, where really you've just done something quite basic that they didn't understand. that's a really easy way to build your credibility. Once you get your credibility, you can start to influence people.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, what a great example. Thanks, Andrew. So look, I'm going to step it up a couple of gears. In terms of in your career, what's been the best bit of advice you've ever received?
The best piece of advice I ever got was my first ever audit partner that I worked for. So I started as a graduate and was reporting straight into an audit manager who quickly became a partner. And he used to drill into me, take ownership. Take ownership of what you're doing and own what you're doing. Don't rely on someone else stepping in to review your work. You own it as if it's yours. And don't ever make assumptions about anything. If you're unsure about something, spend a little bit more time getting it right. And that got drilled into me in my early days, and it's stayed with me my whole career. I mean, I'm a person. I talk about it in my course, and it's also I'm writing a book on the course, and it's part of the chapters is having an appetite for understanding something. So I've always been told I'm quite a curious person and want to understand things. And how do you teach curiosity? I don't think you can teach curiosity. It's really hard to do. But what I try and say is you have to have an appetite to understand stuff and own things. You have to want to understand a problem and get to the bottom of it and dig deep into it if you really want to be helpful and provide value. So yeah, we used to joke in the firm about, you owning this is what he used to always say. But it drilled into me really early on, and if I pick something up, I'll treat it as my own. Treat things as a business owner, that sort of stuff. They're all the same themes. So
Great bit of advice, and to actually get it so young as well. You just reminded me of when I actually had something very similar given to me, but thanks for reminding us of that one. So that was really good advice. In terms of maybe resources or a book you'd recommend our listeners.
Probably two books that I'd recommend. The first one is especially for finance people and people who are leading teams, because most accountants and finance people go through this transition of doing the work and then managing the work. And you need a different skill set. Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek is a great book around managing people and the qualities of managing people and creating a safe environment for them to work in rather than a threatening one where they feel exposed all the time. You can, if you just want to quick find through the book, you can see that on YouTube. Anything from Simon Sinek around that. Another really good book is a book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And that's a book on career, and what I just talked about is the skills that you develop as you're doing the work are very different to the skills that you need when you're leading or managing or directing the work. And that's a great book because it talks about different types of personality traits and how they can come unstuck, and if you've got those people in your team, how you need to approach them and that sort of stuff. It's a really, really good book. It gives different perspectives on things.
Fantastic answers. So I was just thinking, our conversation so far has been sort of focused on the now, and I guess earlier in our careers and what you're seeing in terms of the future, Andrew. If there was one thing you could sort of change in finance and accounting, what would that be?
It's going to sound like I'm repeating myself, but this unlocking this business partnering concept is it's a bit of a passion project for me. And as I said before, I've sort of found myself probably similar to you, right place, right time in terms of the year 2018 and where the accounting industry is, and I'd like to be thought of someone who's influenced that and tried to change that, because I think there's a lot of power in it if we can unlock that as an industry, because if it goes the other way, we may find ourselves staring at an industry that others think don't add any value, and when that happens, the robots will start rolling in. So that's exciting, but with anything that is exciting, there's some nervousness about stuff. But I always jump in and get involved in it and be part of the change. That's how I see the world.
I think it's also a passion for me, and that I suppose we both use finance business partnering as an area we work with, but for me if we, as accountants and finance professionals, look at our scorecard to date, we still have 9 out of 10 businesses failing after 35 years. Doesn't matter what country you're in. You know, and do we really think as professionals who are very well technically trained, that's good enough? You know, so look, I fundamentally believe with finance business partnering, becoming more human with this mindset. You know, let's put the skills to one side for it. It's more of a mindset shift. If we improve that and do that better, we can move the needle, and let's flip it on its head. From 1 in 10 businesses being successful to maybe 2 out of 10, that's 100% improvement. So I think we can do that by switching over and let the robotics take care of all the stuff that takes us away from doing the finance business partnering well, from being human. So that's where I get a lot of drive from it, is I think we can do that better. The business has become better, and then there's more opportunities then for accountants and finance professionals to add even more value as businesses are being more successful.
Yeah, I agree. And I think any accountant out there who doesn't want to get into the business partnering world, I mean, my world, I go to work every day with a thought in my head or an agenda of, for want of a better word, a to-do list of the things I want to get stuck into. And I get there and, my clients, they ask me something completely different. So the variety and the things that you can get involved in and the spaces you can take it to are endless if you're just prepared to get into that space and be a bit vulnerable. You won't know anything. You won't know everything, but that's okay. No one does. But the amount of learning that you can do every day is different, and you're learning something every day, and you pocket that stuff and use it later on.
I like that. It's well described. It's like it described my working day.
So, it's good fun.
Well, exactly, and I think there's probably a bit of a trend there. I don't know, maybe as I'm noticing it more because I've got into this space, this sort of virtual CFO and working with SMEs, but more and more people getting into this space because they're not finding the opportunities in larger companies.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right. It's yeah.
But maybe we should look into it. There's a few people we could probably ask who might know better. But look, Andrew, great conversation. In terms of how best can people get in contact with you if they want to know more about you, and I think you sort of mentioned the courses you're doing. What's the best way of them getting in contact?
Yeah, there's several ways you can get in contact with me. The easiest is on LinkedIn and just reaching out and connecting, and flick me a mail or a message, and I'll respond to that. All my contact details are on LinkedIn, so email, phone number, all that sort of stuff. It's sometimes hard for a global audience to get us at the right time down here in Australia, but by all means, I turn my phone on to silent at night, so if you ring and I don't answer, it just means I'm asleep. So that's probably the best way. I also do a bit of work with Brad Eisenhuth, the Outperformer, who you had on your show a couple of weeks back. Brad and I do a lot of work in this space around finance careers and business partnering and other areas of expertise, leadership and that sort of stuff. So if there's anyone out there who would like to get some insight into how they can bring that alive in their organisation, reach out to us. We can help you there. I also, as I mentioned, I do a development program called Compliance to Commercial. We're running that. So I run that through the Outperformer now, and we're running that again in Sydney in March and in May. If you would like some details, feel free to reach out to me. But you'll probably see a lot of that content on LinkedIn as well going forward. So yeah, they're probably the best ways to contact me.
Thanks, Andrew. And what I'll do is I'll those links that Andrew mentioned up on the show notes as well. So Andrew, look, I really appreciate you taking your time. It's quite late for you there over in Australia. So thanks for making it on the show. Really appreciate your insights and look forward to speaking to you again soon.
No problems. Thanks for having me.
So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed today's show. If you'd like to know more about our guests today, their bio, and follow up on the resources mentioned during the show, you can find all the relevant links and more at sitnshow.com. There you'll also be able to get access to earlier shows, read the latest blogs. There's also an opportunity to subscribe to our newsletter which will give you heads up as to when the next show is coming out, latest events, news, and anything that's going to be relevant to help you have a fun, rewarding, and successful career in finance and accounting. And just before you go, we really appreciate your feedback. If there's something we can do better on the show, something that's not working, or something you'd like to see, even a guest you'd like for us to invite onto the show, someone who you think might be able to benefit you more and also the rest of our community, please let me know. You can email me. I'm at andrew@sitnshow.com, or feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Just drop me a message so I know how you found me and we can connect. And really, it's our community that'll make the show. If we keep engaging and driving each other on, we'll keep on building our strength in the numbers. When all is said and done, if we can do the numbers better and finance better, we'll create more opportunities for ourselves, our friends, our families, our communities, and our businesses. So until next time, have a good rest of the week, take care, and let's keep building our strength in the numbers.